Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really a great honor to take part in this Congress on Ethics and Aesthetics in Islamic Heritage. My presentation today is titled Stones and Stories, Entangled Heritage and Interreligious Possibility in Contemporary Europe, Lessons from Cordoba and Beyond. My presentation is structured in 4 points. I'm going to start for this sociological gaze on Islamic heritage, and then I will delve into the controversy around the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba, and then I will talk a little bit about religion and Europe and beyond. The point of departure. Heritage is considered a living social field from a sociological perspective, not a static legacy. It's important that to understand the past is not simply remembered, but constantly reimagined, often through consultation, affect, and care. So, as a sociology, I analyze the intersection of ethics, of care, responsibility, and aesthetics, the beauty, the effect, the materiality, entangled in heritage. My question today is how ethics and aesthetics intervene in the ways Islamic heritage is lived and debated in Europe today. I explore this through one emblematic case, the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba, a monument that condenses both the splendor and the tensions of Europe's entangled histories. As I once put it, the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba is the building filled with the power of the past. It attracts visitors with its breathtaking beauty, yet its meaning remains deeply contested. The aesthetic admiration it inspires cannot be separated from the ethical and political questions it provokes. Who owns the monument? Who has the right to narrate its history? And what kind of Europe does it represent? I'm going to build on my collaborative work done together with Avi Astor and Marian Buchert. I'll show you here some of the articles and chapters that we have published on the topic. But let me go now to the second part of my presentation, the making of a controversy, the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba. As most of you might know, the Mosque Cathedral was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1984 and stands one of the Europe's most powerful material condensations of multi-religious past. It was built in 786 as the Great Mosque of the Umayyads of Al-Andalus and was transformed into a Christian cathedral after 1236 and is still functioning as a church today. To some extent, the Mosque Cathedral, it embodies what we might call the palimpsest of Europe's religious memory. And over the last 2 decades, this monument has become the center of an intense controversy about ownership, meaning, and moral legitimacy. Specifically, in 2006, the Catholic Church registered the Mosque Cathedral under its name through a legal procedure called immatriculation, which made possible by the Spanish law and in a way privatized the building. This act that it was apparently administrative but had a public and political consequences and triggered a wave of public indignation. Activists and scholars interpreted it as an attempt to privatize the building that many considered as part of everyone's heritage. Everyone's in Cordoba, in Spain, but also in Europe and beyond. From that moment on, the monument became a symbolic battlefield. In 2014, a popular petition titled Save the Mosque of Cordoba, Everyone's Heritage, gathered more than 400,000 signatures. Also, local collectives organized protests and public hearings, while the church reaffirmed its exclusive control. The conflict unfolded through everyday gestures. In the church request that visitors remember this is a Catholic cathedral, in the removal of the word mosque from official brochures, and in the subtle rechristianization of the monument's interpretive narrative. This struggle is not only political, but profoundly affective. In this sense, it's important to remember that heritage sites, as we can see here, the mosque, are always inscribed within specific local affective regimes. Buildings generate emotions and attachments. They can generate feelings of anger and despair, or love even. And when we analyze the Cathedral Mosque of Cordoba, we understand that this is a symbolical condensation, or it's a building that works as a symbolical condensation in the Jeffrey Alexander words and in a way is a material objectivation with symbolical and phenomenological power. And when we analyze the controversy, we might take into account that heritage sites are inscribed within specific local affective regimes, but also in a specific narrative. And when we analyze the narrative around the cathedral, the Most Cathedral of Cordoba, we see that there are three main competing political cultural discourses, each of them articulated through a specific network of events, actors, and things, and each of them engaging simultaneously with the past and the future of the Most Cathedral. So it's very important to take into account that it's not only the building, but the building goes together with narratives that interpret this building, negotiate its meaning, and project its meaning beyond. And what I'm saying, or an analysis of the controversy, shows that there are three main narratives. The first narrative is the one, three competing political narrative, but because are competing, the first one is the one that emphasizes the Christian origins of the mosque, and is this narrative that tries to re-Christianize the narrative, the building, and in a way explains it, the building, as a kind of a symbol of the Christian reconquest of Spain by Christianity, and it's a kind of a discourse that has a strong relation with the right and extreme right in Spain, especially with the most conservative government. The second narrative is the one that it says that Al-Andalus within us is the narrative that tried to make the Most Cathedral as an emblem of a plural past inscribed in a secular present. And the third narrative is the one that tries to reactualize the past and tries to see the Mosque Cathedral as a symbol for an interreligious future. These three narratives are important to take into account, and especially for the following reasons. Regarding the Christian narrative, presents the cathedral as the ultimate restoration of the true religious order, the culmination of the Reconquista, and this narrative is reproduced in guided tours and celebrates continuity and Cordoba and purity. Let me pause for a moment and explain you how the Catholic Church has responded to this growing controversy. In our research at Cordoba Mosque Cathedral, we identified what we could be described as a politics of authentication, a systematic effort to reassert the monument's Christian foundation through material, discursive, and aesthetic strategies. Since the early 2000s, the Cathedral chapter has launched a series of initiatives that combine the languages of archaeology. As you can see in these pictures, for instance, they try to show that beyond the mosque there were before Christian church. The archaeological discoveries are very contested by many experts on the field. I'm not archaeologist. I'm not gonna explain, but I'm just saying that to put this emphasis on the previous layers of the mosque is in trying to say that first was the Christianity, then came the Muslim. And this debate over the origins is this looking for this purity that tries to justify why the Mosque Cathedral should be a Catholic church nowadays. If we go into the Mosque Cathedral nowadays, we will find out a small museum dedicated to San Vicente, which was open within the building and with a lot of tourist brochures that were printed under the name of the Cathedral of Cordoba. And at the same time, in the last years, we see that the chapter of the cathedral has intensified liturgical performance designed to make the monument feel unmistakably Christian. There's candlelight processions, sacred music concerts, visual narratives that saturate the space with Catholic iconography. To some extent, the combination of ritual, scholarship, and exhibition forms what Van der Poel and Brigitte Meyer have called an aesthetics of persuasion, the use of sensory and affective techniques to make a particular historical claim appear self-evident. In a way, through this strategy, the church is not only defending property rights over the Mosque Cathedral, but also is recrafting authenticity itself. There's a reframing of the monument's material beauty as evidence of divine continuity rather than a cultural entanglement. Such acts reveal how heritage politics are never only about ownership or law, they are also about feeling true. The authority of science, the poetics of ritual, and the effective change of view to converge to authenticate one moral order over the another. But this narrative is also kind of a exclusionary narrative because the story of the Muslim history of Spain is hidden along this idea, or is presented as a very small part of the Spanish history instead of presenting it as a cultural entanglement that takes place in the Mediterranean over many decades. So there's another narrative which is important to understand that competes and directly confronts this Christian narrative of the people, and this is the narrative of the people of Cordoba that tries to craft a secular narrative. And they construct the mosque cathedral as the symbol of Al-Andalus. And Al-Andalus takes this kind of new symbolic meaning of a place for everyone, a place of imagination that might be, or sometimes is discussed by historians, of what really was Al-Andalus, if it was that or that other, and you are far more expert than me in this type of discussions. But what's important from a sociological point of view, what's important is that this idea of Al-Andalus as part of the Andalusian historian, but also as part of European historian, served these activists, these local actors, all these people involved in trying to defend the mosque cathedral as a public symbol of coexistence, as the kind of inspiration for the future. They say that this is a lost Al-Andalus as is seen for them as a lost moment of coexistence to be reclaimed. Citizens describe themselves as the pueblo, the legitimate owners of the building, and they consider that they act as guardians of this diversity and watchdogs of the Christian actions. I already talked about the petition that they put forward, but they also consider themselves as as guardians and as watchers of this heritage, and they try to day by day preserve the Islamic origin and the Islamic character of the mosque cathedral. But they don't want to preserve the Islamic characters because they are Muslims, or because they consider that the monument is a monument that can inspire future moments of Europe. In this sense, it's important. And following Sarah Ahmed, we might say that in this context, complaining can be an act of love. This paradox captures what I call secular ethics of care. And across my field work, I met many Cordobans, Andalusian, and Spanish citizens who engage with the Mosque Cathedral, not out of religious devotion, as I was saying, but from a sense of civic duty and moral concern. And what do? They form associations, they attend public hearings complaining against the Christianization of the church. They document injustices, for instance, when some of the material and some of the artistic elements of the mosque cathedral are kind of in a fragile situation, or when there's a kind of over exhibition of Christian symbols. So they in a way they try to monitor every change in signature or interpretation of the mosque. Some of these collectives, such as the Plataforma Mezquita Catedral, Patrimonio de Todos, have developed innovative ways to keep the monument's plural memory alive. They organize alternative guided tours that explain the Islamic layers of the building. They hold open-air lectures on the esplanade and publish detailed reports challenging the church historical claims. Others curate digital archives, map how words like the mosque or Al-Andalus are used by the narrative. And I would like to explain a little bit this narrative by using a quotation from one of the spokesmen of the coalition, Let's Save the Mosque Cathedral. And he said to me in an interview, to speak of the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba is to speak of Cordoba's DNA. To say Cordoba is to say Mezquita, and to say Mezquita is to say Cordoba. A city so old, with so much history, so much culture, so much civilization, of course, that gives us a very specific genetic code, and it really shapes our sensibilities. And the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba gathers together all of that heritage, because in a few meters you can find remains from a Roman capital, a Byzantine column, a Byzantine arch, a column from the Visigothic period, or even eastern parts of the Mediterranean. What does that mean? That in a few meters we move through different centuries. What monument of the world can better define its city than our great mosque cathedral, a great world heritage that not only Cordoba is proud of, but also Andalusia and the rest of humanity. So there is this strange sense of civic duty that's involved in this everyday vigilance of the over Christianization of the monument. And then there's the third narrative, that the one that in a way has been specifically promoted by a community of Muslim converts that has been very active in Spain, and that have tried and have done many different kind of actions in order to kind of turn the mosque cathedral into an ecumenical space. Even some of the representatives sent a letter to a former pope in order to ask for this change, in order to, in a way, generate a new type of monument in Europe. Here we see clearly how contemporary Muslims engage with the mosque, and we see how the convert community has taken the lead in this case, and how local Muslim communities, Muslim migrant communities that have arrived in the last decades in Spain have been more silent in the controversy, because for social reason and for political reason, but they are gaining also a new public role. The sons and the daughters of Muslim migrants are also kind of claiming the Cordoba Mosque to be a space for everyone instead of just as a cathedral. And as a way of summarizing these three competing narratives, let me say that there's this first Christian civilizational, the second secular pluralist, and the third one that is more interreligious futurist. Each narrative has a different project for the building. While the Christian expects the mosque cathedral to remain a Catholic cathedral for many years, the secular pluralist would like the place to be a monument for the city of Cordoba, a civic monument open to everyone, while the Muslim interreligious communities demand the Cordoba Mosque become a symbol of interreligious Europe. In order to be finishing, let me move now to my concluding remarks, in order to put a little bit this idea of heritage with the idea of future. Let me close a little bit by returning to the relationship between ethics and aesthetic, that it's the base of this conference. The Cordoba case teaches us that these dimensions, ethics and aesthetics, are inseparable. The aesthetic experience of heritage, the feeling of awe, the sensory encounter with form and light, is not politically neutral. It shapes how we imagine belonging and what we believe is worth protecting. At the same time, ethics without aesthetics risk abstraction. Care, repair, and coexistence must be felt, embodied, and practiced through material engagement. What I propose here is to understand heritage as a site for aesthetic ethics of coexistence. And specifically, I would end up by four small conclusions. The first is to consider that heritage is always relational. Heritage is not a possession, but a relationship, a web of care, memory, and responsibility that cross religious and institutional boundaries. The meaning, the interpretation of heritage emerges through this relationality. The second conclusion is the importance of material affect. Beauty and emotion are not superficial. They are mediums of ethical engagement. The affection that citizens express toward Cordoba's monument is a form of moral participation. In a way, these secular activists that try to defend the monument, they feel an affect for this building. And also the future orientation. There's this caring for the Islamic past, and also the caring for Europe's future. In my interviews with activists from many different sides, I see this worrying about the future, what heritage might be a pedagogical tool for explaining where we might go as a continent, and how we relate with the Mediterranean and the multi-religious past. And finally, I would like to finish with what Svetlana Boym called reflective nostalgia, the longing for Al-Andalus, as I said beyond, and before and beyond all the historical debates, from a sociological point of view, we might say that it might become a longing for lost possibilities that invite critical reflection and openness. Heritage might work as a pedagogical device. The version of the past that we promote shape the future that we can imagine us. So let's beauty travel us ethically, and let's ethics refine to our sense of ethics. And thank you very much for your listening and for inviting me to be part of this conference.